Driven noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Fun Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow. Step into
Hello and welcome to the Pun Show. So today, my pet rabbit was really acting naughty. You might say I've had a bad hair day. No, that's just a joke. My hair is just not cooperating today. But anyway, thanks for joining me and watching. Today, there's a lot of things I want to talk about. Last week was all guests. And so a lot of stuff just was happening that I didn't really get much of a chance to comment on. So I'm going to go through a number of topics today, and we'll just kind of go through these. The first thing I want to talk about is the rhetoric from the right on the No Kings thing and how they still haven't backed off, even after a pardoned January 6th insurrectionists made threats to Hakeem Jeffries. And so I'm just going to play for you this little clip from Moses. And
individuals have been pardoned as a result of January 6th who have been rearrested on various charges. Did President Trump make a mistake by just offering a blanket pardon for every single person that was convicted as a result of that?
I don't know any of the details of this at all. I don't know who's been alleged to have been involved in this. I will say that anybody who threatens political violence against elected officials or anyone else should be have the full weight and measure of the Department of Justice on their head. I trust that will happen. I hope it will. We are intellectually consistent about that, obviously. I will tell you this.
So, but you know what they say about butts? Everything before the butt doesn't matter.
The violence on the left is far more prevalent than the violence on the right. Don't make me go through the list. You all know it. All of these assassinations.
There has not been a single assassination attempt or assassination carried out by the left. All the assassination attempts and all the assassinations have been by right-wing nutjobs, including the attack on Paul Pelosi, including the attacks on the representative in Minnesota, including the attack on Charlie Kirk, including the attack on Donald Trump. So please go through the list because it won't take very long.
The assassination culture that's been advanced now.
There is no assassination culture, Mike. There's not one. There's not. We don't like go and have little assassination meetings in our little Antifa club meetings. There is no assassination culture. What there is a right wing that stirs up other right wing people that end up doing violent things. Right now, what you are doing is what you are accusing us of doing.
This is the left in almost every case that is advancing this and not the right. So let's not make it a partisan issue. You don't want me to go there. We're just going to say anybody.
Actually, I would love for you to go there because then you'd have to explain it, which is why you don't want to go there. If you had to start actually getting into facts rather than this sort of nebulous accusation, then maybe you would actually not have anything to say, Mike.
Any deranged individual this has to stop. And the rhetoric that you saw on display on Saturday, we highlighted yesterday, it plays into this.
What rhetoric? You didn't highlight any rhetoric yesterday. You just lied yesterday, too. Moses didn't lie, Mike. You're no Moses.
Okay? There are people that get triggered. There are deranged people in society when they hear elected officials participating in a rally that was paid for by Soros and sponsored by communists.
See, and now we're just back to Soros and communists. All those Jewish communist billionaires. That's it. That's who's to blame. It's George Soros and the communists. What is, like, this is hate rhetoric. You're spewing anti-Semitic talking points at one point with blaming George Soros for paying everybody. Number two, you're going straight into the Nazi playbook from the Reichstag fire, blaming the communists, and the communists are anybody that disagrees with you. There's no, like Soros-led communist movement that's having Antifa meetings to assassinate people, Mike.
With signs and placards and
Oh, they had signs and placards. Well, you know who had more than signs and placards? The people that beat police officers with flags on January 6th. There was 0 arrests, Mike, 0 of actual protesters.
mantras that were repeated that we should bring death to, fascist politicians. What they mean is they call every Republican a fascist now.
You just literally called everybody that disagrees with you a communist. And when you are sitting there doing that, that is fascist rhetoric. It's literally what the Nazis did after the Reichstag fire. You are literally spewing fascist talking points by accusing everybody who disagrees with you of being a George Soros paid communist. You're blaming the Jews and the communists for all the problems. So yeah, I'm sorry if that makes you a fascist.
They're calling for the death of elected officials.
No, what they're calling for, the death that they're calling for is 8647, which means removal from office. You weren't complaining about 8646 t-shirts that people were wearing and buying on Amazon. So how about you stop being disingenuous, Mike?
Please, enough of that. We got to stop.
Yeah, I agree. Enough of that. Stop doing it. Lead by example, Mike.
But stop the rhetoric, stop all the nonsense, and stop the violence.
Thank you.
Look, I'm not going to address it because I'm not sure the details of this.
Oh, yeah. But you just accused I don't know the details of this, but you just accused the Jew paid Nazi or the Jew paid communists of being responsible for it. Didn't that, not knowing the details, didn't stop you from blaming Jewish-led communists for it, did it? Huh, Mike? Moses wasn't a liar, Mike.
And I think we've said enough. You know where we...
I think you've said way too much, Mike. Goodbye. That one there were 3 different occasions during the protests where people that were armed pointed guns at protesters. How close did we come to a mass shooting? That wasn't George Soros paid communists. Those were literally MAGA Trump t-shirt wearing fascists. So yeah, back the fornication down, Mike. Resistance Kitty. Awesome. I love when we did not give them any violence, they started propaganda campaigns saying no one showed. Oh yeah, the no one showed. And it's like ridiculous. They'd sit there and they'd show videos after the protests were over. See, everybody left. As though, like, oh, we stopped getting paid and so we stopped protesting. No, the protest was over, so we left because we were abiding by the law and following the law, you jerks. Okay, and that the MSM was using fake video. Yeah, like, they're just insane. They don't even accept that reality exists. Just whatever they say it is. I agree, word for word. Although I don't know what some of those words are. And then Kitty says, yeah, we follow the rules. You wanted to call him a Yeah, something like that. I have a whole list of words that I would like to call him that I can't say on YouTube, but I can say he's a smarmy little female dog. Okay, so I just want to like we came close to a mass shooting. People could have been killed. And they're sitting there talking about assassination culture while when somebody was actually trying to kill the Senate minority leader or the House minority leader, when somebody tried to kill Josh Shapiro, when somebody tried to kill Nancy Pelosi, when people did kill the representative in Minnesota whose name I can't think of right now, they didn't say, "Oh, we need to back off the rhetoric." But a right-wing nut job kills Charlie Kirk for saying right-wing nut job things. Somehow the culture on the left is responsible. You know who radicalized Tyler? Charlie Kirk did. Stop making us responsible for your hate rhetoric, Mike. Okay, so sounds like Kitty likes Mike Johnson almost as much as I do. He has a closeted homosexual pedophile who needs to go there. Yeah, this thing, like there's, like him and Matt Gaetz and like all these, like adopted sons. It's just kind of weird that aren't really adopted, Like I know people that adopted adult or not adult black children, but teen black children and raised them and loved them and cared for them. I'm not saying that makes you a pedophile, but when you fake adopt them and then they disappear from your lives afterward, things start getting a little suspicious there. Are they your servants? Are they are you like raping them? Like what's going on there? I'm just asking questions, as Tucker Carlson would say. All right, so today I honestly don't even think I could stomach it. So I'm just going to show you this chart here. JD Vance is like sitting there doing more to tout this fake peace agreement, which is not a peace agreement. It is a ceasefire. And it's not even a ceasefire since they haven't ceased firing. Like usually when I think of a ceasefire, I think that like the word cease in that exists. But they didn't really cease fire. They just fired. They just kept bombing. This is a chart which compares Israel's attacks on Gaza to Russia's attacks on Ukraine since the peace agreement went into effect, or the ceasefire went into effect. Just since then, I'm not talking about since the beginning of the war. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has dropped about the equivalent, and I'm not even kidding on this, the equivalent of 8 Hiroshima bombs on Gaza. 8. That's how many bombs they have dropped on Gaza. 8 Hiroshimas. You can't even do it with one hand. If you could do it with, Marjorie Taylor Greene can barely do it with one hand and one foot. Get it? See, because 8. Anyway, they've dropped 153 tons of bombs on Gaza since the ceasefire. By comparison, Russia has dropped about 300 to 400 tons of bombs on Ukraine. Couple of differences. Ukraine is a much bigger area than Gaza, and it's not even all of Gaza, it's only half of Gaza. And secondly, there's no ceasefire in Ukraine. Like when you're talking about just as much, if you're in Gaza right now, if you're a Palestinian in Gaza, you're actually experiencing more violence under the ceasefire than if you're in Ukraine and you're actually under an invasion. But we just keep calling it a ceasefire as though any firing has ceased. And it's not just that there's bombs that are dropping. It's about, I think it's 98 Gazans have died. Not Hamas, Gazans, Palestinians. They weren't doing anything. The family that was killed wasn't doing anything. What happened is a couple of Israeli soldiers set off an unexploded device that was an old unexploded device. And so 2 of them died, and they just started bombing the hell out of Gaza again, saying that, Hamas was hiding or whatever. And this is what they're doing all the time. By comparison, only 20, which is still 20 too many. I'm not trying to dismiss 20 civilians in Ukraine dying, but this is an active war situation here being compared with a ceasefire here. And here, that red bars, you're 5 times, there's 5 times as many deaths in Gaza as in Ukraine under a ceasefire. Can we stop pretending that there's even phase 1 has gone into effect? All that happened is that Hamas released the hostages. Sorry, getting some reflux here. So Hamas is getting some has released the hostages. So now Israel doesn't care. They say you haven't released the dead bodies. Well, I'm sorry. Not releasing the dead bodies is not like really justification for making more dead bodies. But the other part of that is that Hamas is saying we can't even, they're on the other side of the yellow line, or, we can't get to them to excavate where they are so that we can give them to you. Which is why I've said all along why I think this whole thing is just a bunch of crap. It's got too many poison pills in it. It was never designed to work. They don't want it to work. Because if they did, they would not put in there things like that Hamas has to destroy all its tunnels and give up all its weapons and any chance of defending itself. They wouldn't put in there this ridiculous board of governors that's led by Donald Trump and Tony Blair. Is it Tony Blair? I think it's Tony Blair. So just in case, this is new to you, the problem there is not a religious issue. As much as the Western media tries to make it out to be a religious war, it is not a religious war. It never has been. And if you want to, learn about the other side, I recommend Edward Said. I don't know if it's pronounced Said or Said, but it's spelled S-A-I-D. He's actually very he's even on it, but he presents the other side as it is. And so what happened is in the 1850s, that area, Palestine, there was no Israel or Gaza Strip or whatever. It was just called Palestine, right? And that area was under Ottoman control. And the Ottoman Empire was starting to, wane after, like 600 years. And so what they did is they needed money. So they said, you have to register your land and pay taxes on it. Well, a lot of these Palestinian farmers either didn't know about the law, didn't understand the law, so they didn't register their land. So then what happened is these oligarchs came in and just started registering the land as though they owned it. And then another aspect of the law was that another aspect of the law change is that you could sell your land to foreigners, which previously was not allowed. So they started selling land, and Jewish people started buying land. And the Jewish people would buy the land, and they'd come over there, and then they would just like show up at your house and say, "Hey, I bought this house, this land. What are you doing here?" And the farmer, who's, for countless generations has been farming that land, he and his ancestors have been farming that land, and all of a sudden they're learning, "Oh, you don't own this anymore. It doesn't belong to you anymore. Somebody bought it." Imagine somebody coming into your house and saying, "I bought your house." And you're like, "I didn't sell it. How could you buy it?" Like, "Well, the bank sold it to me." So that was the beginning of the issue. Is you started having Jews buy up this land, and I'm not blaming Jews for this. They had their own history and their own persecutions going on in Europe, and they just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge. They just wanted to go somewhere where they weren't being murdered. So they started, migrating from Europe, where the Europeans were killing all the Jews, or abusing them. And it didn't start under Hitler. It was like 2,000 years of persecution of Jews for various reasons. And that's also where you get the whole Jews control the universe thing, because it was a sin to borrow money or to loan money for a Christian. So it's against the law for Christians to do it. So the only ones who could loan money were the Jews. And then the Jews would end up getting blamed for being owed money that you borrowed. And then every once in a while, a different king or queen would decide that they were going to blame Jews for stuff, and they would drive them out, and then they would collect all the money. Like, all the money that was owed the Jews would be collected by the crown. So this went on for a couple of thousand years. Jews got tired of it, started buying this land back in Palestine and moving in. And I think there were like just a few thousand Jews before this in the Palestine area, and they always coexisted peacefully with the Muslims and the Christians. And then, but it started to balloon, and it was like, thousands of Jews started moving, and over, I think even before World War II, or I think by 1945, they were about a third of the population. And that was before statehood, or before they made Israel its own country. That wasn't for a few more years. So then the what's the word for this? There's a sorry, I can't think of the word. Nakba. So then came Nakba. And Nakba was when Israel became a state. Like, Palestinians were just forced out of that area and driven out. The closest comparison I can think of is Trail of Tears. It was like a Palestinian Trail of Tears, where they were just marched out. And they had been there for 2,000 years. It's not like, it had happened a couple of weeks ago. The Jews were driven out by the Romans back under Titus in 70 AD. So that area had belonged to Arabs even before there was such a thing as Muslims, for like 2,000 years. And so then this Nakba happened, and it was just devastating to the Palestinian people, who did nothing wrong. And so that's where you started getting, so after that, there was the 7-Day War, and that's where you started getting like the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and, like this kind of fighting back. And now they've been pushed even further into the Gaza Strip, where they basically don't have human rights. And then they, like the Hamas attack is like one of those things where I don't justify it or vindicate it, but I can also say I understand why, if you're growing up and in the conditions they're in, you might want to retaliate. So it's like you can do wrong because you are wronged. Like that, the Hamas attack was wrong does not mean that Israel is right. And that's the way that people have used it. They'll just say, oh, so October 7th, you're okay with that. No, I'm not okay with October 7th. But this did not start on October 7th. It's not like, that Palestine was just living peacefully in the Gaza Strip and they were all happy and hunky-dory and everything like that. And then one day they just decided out of thin air to go and attack Hamas. But the point is that that let me get back to my main point. So what happened with Nakba, with the Israeli war, and then also with even in World War I, there was the Hussein something or other correspondence. There was some communication between the Palestinians and the British that if the Palestinians helped the British in World War I, then they would get, statehood afterward. And there was some confusion, and by confusion, I think it's deliberate confusion by the British, at least if you're, the Palestinians, you see it this way, that, basically the British lied to you, and that this area that we call Palestine would be a nation again, or for the first time. But then instead, and the British also promised the land to the Jews in the Balfour Declaration, and then in another treaty with France, they just divvied up the land between the two of them. Okay, so the two, and then the U.S. has, since Israel's statehood, funded Israel for 80 years. And so, like, a lot of it, people are like, well, what about Biden? And it's like, I disagree with how Biden handled things, but I'm not quite sure if there was a right way to handle things. So the U.S. and Britain are the two nations in Palestinians' mind, other than Israel. They are the two principal nations that have enabled Israel to do what they have been doing. So to have this board, this independent board headed up by Donald Trump and Tony Blair, is not even a feasible situation. It will never happen. It is impossible. It just won't happen. And Hamas is willing to hand over control of the country. They just don't want to hand it over to imperialists that have caused and contributed to the cause of their current plight. Again, just as a metaphor, the closest I can think of would be like if France, after the revolution, had said, okay, we own the US now. So there is like this other side of the story, right? And you can't understand why this peace agreement will never work if you don't understand the history. That history is real. I'm not making it up. You can look it up. It didn't start on October 7th. It started in the 1850s. So you got J.D. Vance sitting there talking about how there's, this, peace agreement is, we're ready to enter into phase 2. We haven't even finished phase, and we're never going to finish phase 1. because Israel doesn't want to finish phase 1. And Donald Trump's not going to get his beachfront property unless eventually they just genocide out the whole Gaza Strip, which I think it's sadly more and more looking like the case. I wanted to believe in humanity, in the humanity of some, but it doesn't look like it's happening. Remember when Trump said that, oh, why can't they just go to Egypt? Yeah. Remember when Jared Kushner talked about what great beachfront property that would be? Yeah. You get where I'm going, right? Like, this does not seem to me like just innocence and Hamas is, stirring the kettle and Israel's just defending themselves. You don't defend yourself by dropping 153 tons of bombs because your own soldiers accidentally stepped on a old IED. All right. So let's go on to the next topic. Okay, yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about, this is an article I want to share with you, and I hope you get a chance to read it. Let me just I'm gonna adjust my screen a little bit here. So this is ProPublica just released this article a couple of days ago. And they found more than 170 U.S. citizens have been held by immigration agents. They've been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. I just want to read the first few paragraphs for you. When the Supreme Court recently allowed immigration agents in the Los Angeles area to take race into consideration during sweeps, Justice Brett Kavanaugh said that citizens shouldn't be concerned, right? Well, if you're a citizen, what do you have to worry about, right? Like, well, if you're a brown citizen, you have to worry about being thought of as an illegal, which is not a noun, by the way. But, in these ICE agents, AKA pardoned January 6th terrorists, in their mind, anybody that's brown is illegal. So if the officers learn that the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, Kavanaugh wrote, they promptly let the individual go. But is that true? That is far from the reality. Many citizens have experienced this is far from the reality many citizens have experienced. Americans have been dragged, tackled, beaten, tased, and shot by immigration agents. They've had their necks kneeled on. They've been held outside in the rain while in their underwear. At least 3 citizens were pregnant when agents detained them. One of those women had already had the door of her home blown off while Department of Homeland Security Kristi Noem watched. About 24 Americans have said that they were held for more than a day without being able to phone lawyers or loved ones. Videos of U.S. citizens being mistreated by immigration agents have filled social media feeds, but there is little clarity on the overall picture. The government does not track how often immigration agents hold Americans. And I would really like to know why they do not do that. Is it because they are not the most transparent, administration in the history of the world, like they want to suggest? So anyway, they compiled and reviewed every case they could find of agents holding citizens against their will, whether during immigration raids or protests. While the tally is almost certainly incomplete, we found that more than 170 such instances during the first 9 months of President Donald Trump's second administration. So I encourage you, if you get a chance, to read that article. I post a link for it, both on, on Facebook, everywhere that I'm posting this video. I think it's very important that we know what is happening with ICE right now. And so the next thing I want to show you is there have been already 25 deaths in ICE custody. 25. Whoops. Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, 25 deaths in ICE custody right now. This says 23, but there's 2 more that have been added in October that aren't in this chart. So 25. That's to put things in perspective. Oh, hang on. Let me show you. I thought I had this up and ready to go, but I guess not. Sorry, I thought I had something that I don't, but this is the average deaths per year in ICE custody by presidential administration. So this is Trump's per year pace, which I think will go up. And then we have this here is, whoops, let me get rid of this banner. All right, yeah. You can tell I'm a one-man operation here. I don't have like an expensive production crew. So anyway, Trump's on pace to hit 26, 27, which I think he'll fly past that this year. The average per year for Bush, who was second, was about 10. Trump, even in his first administration, was 8. Obama was around 7, and Biden was around 5. And Trump is just getting going. And I also, like Bush, I think he had the most was 26. And the reason that his were so high is the first year that I started detaining people, it was 2004. And so there were these detentions and there was no facilities to hold them. And so they were being put in prisons where they didn't have adequate, where the facilities just weren't adequate to house that many people. And so they weren't getting the medical care they needed and things like that. And so, people were dying. But that dropped off to like 4 or 5 by the second year, and where it's been. And there's going to be people that die, but not at 5 times the rate. There's so much negligence and so much disregard for human life from the pro-life party. And this also is not counting another 10 that were released to the hospital, like while they were dying, not so that their lives could be saved, but so that they wouldn't be counted as in ICE custody anymore. So if you can include those 10 that basically died on the way to the hospital, you're already at 35. He's shattering the record for people killed. And I think this is one of those things. ICE is killing people through negligence. And I'm sure there's probably been a few killed due to just force. And there's been a lot of the, like I was just talking about with ProPublica, there's all these videos of them just beating the crap out of people. And like there was an old man, a 79-year-old man, not Donald Trump, another 79-year-old man that ran a car wash, and they just threw him on the ground and beat him. And he's like got dislocated ribs, broken ribs, dislocated elbow. He's battered, and it's like, why? Why do you have to beat the crap out of this old man that's just wanting to show you that his employees are there legally? it starts to make me think it's not about status, legal status, as much as about color. And I'm saying that somewhat facetiously because we all know it's about that. It's not like I'm actually just now coming to this realization. Yeah, when you go and it's like there's this facade of legitimacy when you take a racist and put a uniform on him that somehow it legitimizes his abuse and violence. And it's like you see like 12 of them ganging up on like a middle-aged woman dropping her kids off at school, as though like the woman is the one that's the threat. And they talk about, oh, well, assaults on ICE agents is up 800%. And it's like, yeah, you accuse them of punching you in the fist with their face. Like so many of these assaults are not real assaults. And you're not wearing, you're wearing masks, you're not identifying yourself, you're not showing warrants. It's only a matter of time before people start getting killed. And I don't just mean the immigrants. I mean, there's going to be somebody, they're going to go and they're going to try and just attack the wrong person who's going to happen to have a gun, and he's going to like defend himself. Which, hey, if a bunch of masked individuals come up and start trying to shove me in a van, I'm going to try and defend myself too. Why is it like assault against an ICE officer if you don't identify yourself as an ICE officer and prove you're an ICE officer? That's why you look at these alleged assaults. They don't end up being prosecuted because there is no assault. I think there's maybe like a half dozen ICE officers who have been injured, like hospitalized, injured by these 800% assault increase or whatever it is. So yeah, I think they might be, and you've seen some of these, assaults where like one ICE officer will shove a black woman into another ICE officer that happens to be a representative, and she gets charged with assault because she bumped in to this other officer because the first officer pushed her into them. That's not assault. That's being a victim of assault. Especially if she's there doing her job and her constitutionally protected duty. And, I do think it's ironic that she is now using the same decision that Trump used to make her argument about having immunity for doing her job. Okay, so meant to put that banner up for this, but we'll move on past it. Okay, so let's move on to this knuckle. Well, yeah.
Public reporting, survivor testimony, and official documents show that Bill Clinton had far closer ties to Epstein.
So I thought I had that in this clip, but
let's be clear. Democrats don't care about transparency or accountability in this matter. The evidence we've gathered does not implicate President Trump in any way. Public reporting, survivor testimony, and official documents show that Bill Clinton had far closer ties to Epstein.
So we're just supposed to take your word for that, James, huh? We're just supposed to take your word for that? Like, isn't transparency, I don't want to sound naive or anything, but when I think of the word transparency, I think that like it means transparency. This is about as transparent as lead. It is ridiculous. He is actually sitting there with his mouth stating the words that they're not going to release the Epstein files because of their commitment to transparency. And we're just supposed to take his word that Trump isn't in the files at all. There's nothing wrong, but there's stuff about Clinton. All right, then why are you covering up for Clinton, James? Release the files so we know what Clinton did. Transparency is not making a hollow accusation while you're defending your golden god there. That's not transparency. That is the opposite of transparency. That is you just lying and telling us we need to take your word for it because you're so transparent. That's not transparent, Mike. It's not. Release the Epstein files. Because we don't believe you. And come on, how many times? Why is he even talking? He has lied so much. All he does is lie. He lied about Hunter Biden. He lied about Joe Biden. He lied about the Biden crime family. Remember the big investigation into the Biden crime family? Meanwhile, Donald Trump's just bombing the crap out of innocent people on the high seas. And we can't investigate that because the government is shut down. But we can sit there and, well, we reviewed the Epstein files and there's nothing there. Ha ha. Yeah, I don't believe you, James. I don't. You're a liar. You've got a track record. So when you just sit there and say, we're being transparent by just telling you what we found, that's not transparency. That's the opposite of transparency. Okay. So, I don't know. Release the Epstein files, please. Like, we'd love that. Might even give you some credibility. Or at least just sit the representative from Arizona so that we can force you to. The more they dig into not releasing the Epstein files, the more convinced I am there's something in them. And you want to say, oh, well, what about Clinton? Why are you covering up for Bill Clinton? Release the Epstein files so we know what Bill Clinton did. Go on. I double dog dare you.
Mar-a-Lago Club and Trump Bedminster. Those are always the best to see. He's really done a great job with that Rose Garden out there as well.
Okay, sorry.
And I think it is an incredible thing to see. I also love seeing those beautiful umbrellas there that remind me of the Mar-a-Lago Club and Trump Bedminster. Those are always the best to see. He's really done a great job with that Rose Garden out there as well.
Because how many of us haven't looked at the White House and said, gee, if only it looked more like Mar-a-Lago. Whoops, that's not it. I'm trying to find another chart. I thought I had it queued up, but that's it. So if you haven't seen it and have been living under a rock, this is, oh, here, let's see what happens. So this right here is a chart showing how much money Donald Trump has spent on his various vanity projects, including the one that she's sitting there praising for, making it look more like Mar-a-Lago, which, yeah, that's what we need. We need more Mar-a-Lago. Maybe we can have all women over 40 like forced to like wear plastic for their faces like you do over there too. Like, come on, Laura. So these vanity projects, we've got $250 million for the renovations on the White House that are destroying the East Wing for no good reason, and which, by the way, is supposed to be approved by the Historical Society and it's costing $250 million, and they're saying, oh, well, it's all going to be private donations. And it's like, I don't know which is worse. Like having taxpayers pay for it, or having private companies like Amazon with a financial investment in the White House. Personally, I don't think that the White House should be corporate owned, even though the president is. So there's that. Then remember his $50 million birthday parade? And that free plane from Qatar? Qatar. That's it. Sorry. The free plane from Qatar. Remember that? That's only going to cost us $750 million in upgrades. And then there's the $200 million on Christy Noem's 2 Gulfstream jets, because you can't get by with just one. Like, how many planes can you fly on at the same time, Christy? Painting the border wall because he didn't like the aesthetics? We're going to spend $500 million on that? And we can't pay for people's health care? The triumphal arch thing, like, which is going to be paid for with the leftover ballroom money, his little garden, and his imperialization of the White House Oval Office. Altogether, that's over $2.5 billion on just vanity. And don't even get me. Then there's also the $183 million a year. So like that's another $750 million just on him golfing. But we can't pay for school lunches. Something is seriously wrong with MAGA. Like seriously, morally wrong. Like you claim to be Christians, but you don't behave like Christians. You behave like hateful, spiteful little lemmings. Just why? Why? Why is it so important to you to own the libs? Like, I spent 15 years as a Christian minister. I've read the Bible. I know the Bible probably better than almost any MAGA. And if you are sitting there anticipating the day the Lord returns, because all the people that disagree with you are going to burn in hell, then you're doing it wrong. If you're using what you think are the last days to own the libs and not talk about the actual message of Jesus, you're doing it wrong. You're not Christian, you're anti-Christian. This is the mindset of the Antichrist. You are not Christians. Stop calling yourself Christians, because you're not. You're people who have usurped something. And I don't know where I stand on all that anymore, but I do know that what they're doing is nothing to do with Christians. What they're doing is just hate. And people say, well, people have always used religion to justify violence, and I agree with that. But I think people have also used atheism to justify violence. It's not exactly like Stalin was a born-again Christian or something, but don't be manipulated into thinking that this is what being a Christian means. It doesn't. Oh, we've got, okay, that's where they were. Okay. Sorry, got distracted. What is this one? Want to make sure I got everything. Okay, yeah, that's the Vanity product. All right. So anyway, we've got, oh my goodness, so many comments. Oh, Kitty, I'm sorry. I was in a different screen and didn't see. So yeah, I think, you don't just do away with 150 years of history. I'd like the East Wing was from 1902. And it was renovated in the 1940s. And I don't have a problem with modernizing it or upgrading it, but tearing it apart to build a ballroom for a man that has no balls seems kind of ridiculous to me. Why do we need to spend that money right now? And well, it's privately funded. Okay, why don't you ask those people to donate money to food banks? It's like they're always like, we would give more charity if we didn't have to pay higher taxes. Okay, Elon, how come you're not filling food banks? Taylor Swift, when she went on her Eras tour, this to me is really something. Every single stop, she would go to the local food banks and say, how much do you need to be topped off for the year? Like for a whole year, how much do you need? And then she would give them that. Every single stop. So, you can be a billionaire and not be a horrible person at the same time. Like, I don't like disavow wealth as a concept or, but the more you have, the more should be required. So at least she's a decent human being with what she does with her money. Or Elon, Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, what's her name? I think that, she's committed to trying to donate almost all of her money. There's another billionaire whose name I can't think of that he was a billionaire and now he's worth $1 million. And he just donated everything else. You don't have to donate yourself into poverty, but at least change the big ass number that's in your bank account that has no effect on your life, Elon. Elon could give $200 billion to charity tomorrow, and it would not affect him in any way at all. Oh, he'd have to sell stocks. So what? People have to sell stuff to pay for their taxes all the time. Like he might have to sacrifice something. Is insane. Somehow that's a moral defense for you. Okay, so the plane, the other day. Yeah, I ended up using lower end estimates for that. It could easily climb up into $4 billion in vanity projects. And that's not even including the way that he's used the Oval Office as a slush fund, or how he has used his presidency as a slush fund to, get all these, Mr. Transparency won't tell us how much money he's making off of all these crypto schemes and everything. But Hunter Biden sold a painting. Meanwhile, Trump and his entire family are hauling in billions. But you got James Comey over here. Is it Comey? Which one is Comey? James Comer.
Let's be clear.
Comer. I always get them mixed up. They're just the names. Comer versus Comey. Anyway, Comer over there is going on about, this made up stuff about Bill Clinton, or not made up stuff about Bill Clinton, but his totally being transparent, right? Well, what happened to transparency when it comes to Donald Trump and his family making millions of dollars off of him being president? Oh, but he donates his salary. He doesn't live off his salary. He lives off of his grifting, which is worth a lot more than his salary. And that grifting, part of his grifting is donating his salary. Do you ever see that TV show Hustle? That it was a British show. about these, con artists that would take down the bad people. It was a good show. Kind of like Leverage, but it was more just like All Kind. But it was a good show. And they always would point out there, to make a grift work, you have to put in a little bit of your own money. Because that's how you convince the mark to give their money. So that $400,000 a year he's donating to charity is not being donated to charity. It's being invested in his grift. And that's, if he is donating it, like Kitty says here, there is no, and like he'll show checks, but like we don't know if that check is coming out of his money. Like so much of his charity is from the Trump Foundation, which is a slush fund. Like he is not a charitable person. Let's never, ever, ever pretend he is again. He is a grifter. He's the grifter in chief. And if that offends you, that's because you're grifted. Don't be grifted. Make America grift again. Man. Anyway. That's it for today. I'm trying to keep these to an hour now. So I appreciate you guys for watching. Thanks, Kitty, for commenting. It always helps to get some feedback. I'll see you guys around the interwebs.